Good morning, everyone, all the students. Today, we are going to conduct a lecture on the second part of Unit 1 of Introduction to International Business. So, in this video, we will understand concepts like the multinational corporations, evolution, features of multinational corporations, then dynamics of global enterprises, consequences of economic globalization, Brexit, and reverse globalization. So, this topics we will cover today. Okay. Now, so what is a multinational company? A multinational company is one which is incorporated in one country, that is the home country, but whose operations extend beyond the home country and which carries on business in other countries called the host countries, in addition to the home country, of course. Now, what is the evolution of multinational corporations? The dynamics of international business, as we have studied yesterday, it creates a great need for the evaluation of multinational corporations. So, the multinational corporation is a company engaged in producing and selling goods or services in more than one country. So, how is it? It is like normally consists of a parent company located in the home country and few or more foreign subsidiaries. Some MNCs have more than 100 foreign subsidiaries scattered around the world, right? So, it is the globally coordinated allocation of resources by a single centralized management that differentiates the multinational enterprise from other firms engaged in the international business. That is, MNCs make decisions about market entry, strategies, ownership of foreign operations, and production, marketing, etc., like financial activities, like with an eye to what is best for the corporation as a whole, right? So the true multinational corporation emphasizes a group performance rather than the performance of its individuals, right? So there are different types of multinational companies, such as the very first one is raw material seekers. Now, the raw material seekers were the earliest multinationals, and their aim was to exploit the raw materials that could be found overseas. The modern counterparts of these firms, the multinational oil, the mining companies like such as like British Petroleum, etc., International Nickel, etc., are the examples of raw material seekers. The next is market seekers. Now, the market seekers, who are they, is the archetype of the modern multinational firms that goes overseas to produce and sell in the foreign markets. Like, for example, to give you a few examples, take IBM, Toyota, Unilever, Coca-Cola, a few of the examples of market seekers multinationals. The next type of multinational is cost minimizers. Now, cost minimizers are a fairly recent category of firms doing business internationally nowadays. So these firms seek out and invest in a lower cost production sites overseas. Like, for example, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Taiwan, India is also one of them. Like because here the labor is available at lesser cost, resources are available at lesser cost, raw materials are, so they go for cost minimizers. So to remain cost competitive, both at home and abroad, because of course economies of scales come in. Because if you get your inputs at a low cost, of course your cost of production decreases, and then you're in a better position to have more margin or sell goods at a lesser cost than others and then compete, right? So these benefits come in. MNCs have to follow the change in macroeconomic factors, environmental and social issues, and business and industry developments. Now, these factors will all profoundly shape the corporate landscape in coming years, right? Let's understand the features of let's understand the features of multinational corporations. Now we'll see them one by one. The very first feature is huge assets and turnover. Of course, it involves that because of operations on a global basis, right? MNCs have huge physical and financial assets. So this results in huge turnover, of course, that is sales of MNCs. Like, in fact, in terms of assets and turnover, many MNCs are bigger than national economies of several countries. So there's a huge investment, right? The next feature is international operations through a network of branches. Now, MNCs have production and marketing operations in several countries, we know. So operating through a network of branches, subsidiaries, and affiliates in host countries. This is one of the features of multinationals. The next feature is unity of control. That is, MNCs are characterized by unity of control. What is that? MNCs control business activities of their branches, right, in foreign countries through their head office located in the home country. So managements of branches operate within the policy framework of the parent corporation in the home country. So this is how they have unity of control. The next feature is mighty economic power. Now, MNCs are powerful economic entities, we know that, because of huge investment, huge turnover, right? So they keep on adding to their economic power through constant mergers and acquisitions of companies in host countries. This gives them a good economic power. The next feature is advanced and sophisticated technology. Generally, MNC has its command over advanced and sophisticated technology, you know, because of huge investment, because they have a lot of funds available, so they can invest. So it employs capital intensive technology in manufacturing and marketing. So this gives them mass production facility, lesser cost production. So this benefit is available with MNCs, right? The next feature is professional management. Of course, MNCs employ professionally trained managers to handle huge funds. They have managerial economies. That is, they have people with specialization. For HR, they have a HR specialized person. For finance, they have a finance. They have CAs. They have ICWA people. They have MBA with finance people. They have specialized people for specialized activities. They have advanced technology and international business operations. So this is also one of the features of MNCs. The next is aggressive advertising and technology. And marketing. So what is that? MNCs spend huge sum of money on advertising and marketing to secure international business. So this is perhaps the biggest strategy of success of MNCs. Because of this strategy, they are able to sell whatever products and services they produce and generate all over the world, right? And these advertising and marketing cost is a fixed cost, we all know. So as their operations increases, this cost gets distributed over the large amount, and then the cost minimizes, right? Economies of scale comes in, because it being fixed, you have to 1 lakh of the expense on advertisement. Even if your production rises more than the existing one, you're still spending 1 lakh. So this is how you're spreading it in a huge amount of production, the same cost. So this is what a benefit comes out of to the MNCs. We'll see in the future slides about economies of scale. The next one is better quality of products. Of course, they have to compete on the world level, and therefore it is very necessary for them to pay attention on the quality of products. Otherwise, they will be out of the competition, right? So then why we prefer the products of MNCs more? Because somewhere as a customer, we know that it would be of a quality, or it is like fixed in our mind. If it is an MNC, the product should be of good quality. Why? Because we know they'll have to maintain the products, they'll have to maintain the qualities. So this is very generalized thing, very generalized feature of an MNC. So I hope you understood all these features thoroughly. Let's move on to the next slide. That is dynamics on the global enterprise, the next topic of this particular unit. Now, global business generally refers to what? It refers to international trade. So a company which is doing business all over the world, that business, of course, are called global enterprises. So earlier also there were exchange of goods, right, over a great distance. Such trade, of course, was not by definition global, but has the same characteristics, right? So as an accelerating shift in the global economic landscape from Europe and North America to Asia, then Latin America and Africa intensifies, global business enterprises are happening to find themselves operating in new and sometimes unfamiliar market environments, because they are now working in a foreign market, right? So such global dynamics create new opportunities, challenges, risk, and threats, which would need to be understood if such business are to succeed. So inevitably, such challenges and opportunities vary between companies and sectors. It depends, right? Whereas the market of enterprise portals is developing across the globe by developing the information as per the consumer's requirement. So day by day, the end user necessities are fluctuating, and they need to influence their audience effortlessly, because the need of the customer, the demand of the customer is continuously changing in the dynamic world, and companies will have to adapt themselves, their products, to meet our needs, the customers' needs. So the portals fulfill these necessities and enable the merchants to come up with new and innovative ideas, of course, designs, services, solutions, and mechanisms, whatever required. The large merchants and small vendors are more disruptive to compete in portal market. The administrations now are picking up the portal to enlarge their business around the world. So maximum of the vertical are approving it, and very much cost effective and bringing the efficient amount of revenue for the enterprises. So the enterprises are presenting the proficient interest in accepting the portal and are investing more on their presentation and employment and all, right? Like, moreover, the opportunities of intercompany partnership to produce the profit with affluence is likely to portend well for the enterprise portal market. Not only has this, the increasing competition among the enterprises to recollect the customers is further increasing the market growth, right? So the significant increase in the number of manufacturing and automotive industries, like in the respective region, is booming up. The existence of the major technology like giant in Asia Pacific is the foremost reason for booming up all this. So this is how the global market is changing, right? So, and this gives birth to globalization. So now let's understand what are the benefits of globalization. The very first benefit is foreign direct investment. Now FDIs, it tends to increase at a much greater rate than the growth in the world market. Yesterday we have studied what are FDIs, right, in yesterday's slides. So helping boost technology transfer, industrial restructuring, and the growth of global companies are the benefits of globalization. The next is technological innovation, that is increased competition from globalization. It stimulates new technology development. As we discussed that they have to work as the customer's demand, and the customer's demand is changing every day. So they have to adapt their products, develop their products, make them as per the customer needs. So the technological innovations are part and parcel of the globalization, and it gives us the better and better products to use to the customers. So particularly with the growth in FDI, which improve economic output by making processes more efficient by technological innovations. So that is one of the benefits of globalization. The next one is economies of scale. Now, globalization enables large companies to realize economies of scale. What gives rise to economies of scale? What is the meaning of economies of scale? That is reduced cost and prices, which in turn supports further economic growth. So, however, what are the reasons of economies of scale? Let me tell you. Few can be specialization in the use of labor, capital, managerial economies, as we discussed. They may get volume discounts, that is, prices of inputs fall, that they get raw material at less cost, volume discounts, because they buy raw material in a huge amount because of huge production. So of course they get volume discounts, and thereby decreasing the price of inputs and decreasing the cost of production and giving them more competitive advantage, right? The next economies of scale can be, as we discussed, spreading out of promotional expenses, spreading out of advertisement cost, because they are fixed cost and they spread out over a large production. As the production rises, the cost is divided among large amount. The next can be technological innovations, as we just discussed before, and because of mass production, the production can happen at a lesser cost. R&D gives rise to economies of scale. So these are all benefits of globalization that comes in with it, right? But along with the benefits, the drawbacks also comes. It's by natural, right? So what are the consequences of economic globalization? Like, at the same time, global economic growth and industrial productivity are both driving force and the major consequence of globalization. There are also big environmental consequences as they contribute to the depletion of natural resources, right? Deforestation can happen, destruction of ecosystem can happen, then loss of biodiversity can happen. So there are a lot of economic consequences, drawbacks of globalization. So some of the risks are what? Interdependence. Now, what is that? Interdependence between nations can cause regional and global instabilities if local economic fluctuations end up impacting a large number of countries relying on them. So this can be a big drawback. The next can be national sovereignty. Now, what is that? Some see the rise in nation states, multinational or global firms, and other international organizations as a threat to sovereignty. So ultimately, this could cause some leaders to become nationalistic and dominate, right? So this can be a drawback. And next can be equity distribution. That means the benefits of globalization can be unfairly skewed towards rich nations or individuals, creating greater economic inequalities within a country and in the world. So these are few drawbacks, along with, of course, environmental loss that we have just discussed, right? So these are pros and cons of globalization that we discussed. The next is Brexit. Now, what is Brexit? Brexit is the withdrawal of United Kingdom, that is UK, from the European Union, EU. Following the UK-wide referendum in June 16, in which 52% voted to leave and 48% voted to remain in EU. So the British government formally announced the country's withdrawal in March 17, beginning the Brexit process. Now, the withdrawal was delayed by deadlock in the UK Parliament. Like following general elections in 17 and 19, Parliament ratified the withdrawal agreement, and the UK left the EU on 31st Jan 2020. So this began a transition period that is set up to end in December 20. So during which the UK and EU are negotiating their further relationships. So the UK remains subject to EU law and remains part of EU. EU means European Union, customs union and single market during the transition, but is no longer part of EU's political bodies or institutions now, UK. So the key tenets of globalization, including trade and immigration, were among catalysts that pushed UK to exit the EU, right? So more broadly, Brexit raises question about the future stability of the EU and the extent to which further globalization is inevitable, right? So that is about Brexit. You'll have a small short note if it comes on Brexit, a 5 marks short note. So just much knowledge is enough. Although there is a lot more to understand about it. If you want, if you're interested and curious, you can go to Google and find out about Brexit more. But I thought it's just a single point in your syllabus, so just to give you a generalized idea about Brexit. Now, the next topic I'm going to cover in this particular unit is reverse globalization. Very important because of this pandemic situation. Now, reverse globalization or deglobalization is the process of diminishing interdependence and integration between certain units around the world, typically nation states. In other words, to explain you, it is widely used to describe the period of history when economic trade and investment between countries decline. So it stands in contrast to globalization, which is opposite to globalization, in which units become increasingly integrated over time and generally spans the time between periods of globalization. While globalization and deglobalization are antitheses, they are no mirror images, of course. So the term deglobalization has derived from some of very profoundly change in many developed nations. Like we have to go to the past, like where trade as a proportion of economic activity until 1970s, I believe was below peak levels in early 1910s. So this decline reflects that their economies became less integrated with the rest of the world economies in spite of the deepening of economic globalization. So this is what gave birth to reverse globalization. So at the global level, only two longer periods of deglobalization occurred. I'll tell you first, namely in the 1930s during the Great Depression, and then again in 2010, when following the Great Trade Collapse, the period of the world trade slowdown set in. So these were the two periods when reverse globalization took place. So to explain you more, when you have emerging market players going out, they're going out and acquiring developed institutions, is a tide that no matter how you try to swing against it, will prevalent in the years to come. So this is something that is opposite to globalization that is happening. So I have an assignment for you guys with relation to this. So the very first assignment, yesterday we have taken 2 assignments, 1 and 2 for first unit. Today 3 and 4. So third assignment for you guys is you have to tell me impacts of globalization in India. And the number 4, very important, is will coronavirus reverse globalization, right? So these are the 4 assignments that you have to do in this particular unit. These are just general assignments to increase your understanding. Am I clear? So you have to write it down. You don't have to write with the pen. Just go to the internet, find out, search it, prepare a Microsoft Word document, right? And nicely put up 4 assignments in that and mail me on this particular email ID, that is placement@gmail.com, right? So this is just to give you understanding of the topic we have covered, because it becomes that when I've stopped teaching and the topic is covered, so you guys forget the things. Okay.